Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, or I should say good morning, good evening, wherever you are joining from. Welcome to the panel on emerging technologies and innovation in fashion apparel supply chains. I'm Mehmet Shekip Altug. I'm the Director of Center for Retail Transformation at Costello College of Business at George Mason University. I'm also Associate Professor of Information Systems and Operations Management. I will be moderating this panel. Today, we are very happy to have three experts and leaders in the retail industry. Candan Erengic at Anthropologie, Shefali McDermott at Armoire, and Sanjay Paul at Burlington. I'm looking forward to a great lively panel discussion with them today. If you have any questions at any point in time, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A section. I'll try to go through them and bring it up with our speakers, depending on how we do with the time. With that, let me hand it over to our speakers so that they can go ahead and introduce themselves. Candan, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Candan Erengic. As Mehmet said, I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Anthropologie Group based in Philadelphia. My background actually originated, 25 years ago. I started in automotive manufacturing, and from there spent some time in other manufacturing industries, consumer products, and then apparel, and then made the jump into retail some years ago. With I think the biggest takeaway for me being that making a car was more complicated than making pants. And so I think while the transition seems odd to some, it actually wasn't too disruptive of one.
Great. Shefali, would you go?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Shefali McDermott. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Armoire. We're a clothing rental company based out of Seattle, Washington. I spent my early career doing tax stuff at PricewaterhouseCoopers and then at other various companies. But my friend Ambika Singh is the CEO of Armoire, and she started this out of MIT Business School. And on her way home, she called me up and she said, "You're my most organized friend. Do you want to run the operations?" And I said, "Sure. Don't know anything about it, but let's do it." So we started out of our friend's apartment in Capitol Hill in Seattle, and now we're operating out of a nice big warehouse just south of downtown. So that's my story.
Thank you. Sanjay, would you go?
Hey, everyone. This is Sanjay. I head up our corporate strategy team here at Burlington Stores in South Jersey. My background over here, it's been about a decade or so across various roles, from store operations, running controllership and other functions, to setting up the original strategy team when we were still privately held by Bain Capital, and then now back again running the strategy team here. And lots of diverse experiences. We'll probably tap into some of that through the course of these discussions over here. But prior to coming here, a decent stint in consulting for a little bit in the retail consumer goods space. And prior to that, some time in a best-of-breed supply chain company that I share with Mehmet back in the days, a company called I2 Technologies. So, happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Well, great to have all three of you. Thank you. So let's get started. As we all know, supply chains are affected by the changes in consumer behavior and the customer trends. So with that, what are the new customer trends you have been observing and the changes in consumer behavior? Because as you know, pandemic has changed everything, right? It has changed how we shop, our priorities, especially after that. What kind of changes have you observed so that we can evaluate the implications of that on inventory management and supply chains better? Shefali, would you like to go first?
Sure. Yeah. So pre-pandemic, Armoire was just under 3 years old, and we were just ready to take off. We had had our biggest growth month prior to the pandemic, and it just cut us right at the knees. So we were fortunate enough to have the majority of our tenured customers, so anybody who was with us for longer than 3 months, kind of stuck stuck with us during the pandemic because they had already gotten into the habit of rental. And we had had the opportunity to educate them on how to use the service and what rental was about. But anybody who had been with us for less than 3 months pretty quickly dropped off, I think, just due to the nature of everything that was going on. But about a year into the pandemic, once we decided it was kind of safe to kind of turn back our marketing spend on, what we found was that we were really riding on the tails of Newly, an urban company. Newly is also a clothing rental company. And I think alongside their marketing spend, we were able to kind of ride that wave of them also educating people on clothing rental. So we've found that it's been much more, it's been easier to convert, and we haven't had to educate people so much on what clothing rental is. People are now much more familiar with it and open to the idea. So acquisition, I think, has been easier, possibly due to that.
Great. Jandan, any changes for your customers?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'd say changes in what people buy as well as how they buy, right? So, I mean, I think everybody's probably pretty familiar with what happened during the pandemic, right? I mean, huge shift to, to DTC and e-com environments and away from physical retail, and a huge shift into sort of casualization, and then, buying home goods as opposed to, outfitting, work clothes and things like that. And so, now I'd say we're well out of the pandemic effect in terms of what people buy, right? And they're back to buying apparel, and they're back to buying, stuff that's home related, but more on the entertainment side and posting side versus the, let me build a she shed to work in to get away from, my kids and stuff like that. But then in terms of how they shop, because e-com volume grew so much, during the pandemic, people became very comfortable with omni-channel capabilities that they maybe weren't comfortable with before, right? So, things like, buying online, picking up in store, returning, things that people maybe weren't comfortable but with before, they grew very comfortable with, and they've continued to be very comfortable with. And so we're seeing that omni-channel now means, really mature capabilities when it comes to those tech-enabled, omni-channel capabilities, while also having a really great customer service mindset in stores, because our customers are definitely coming back to stores and want that engagement and experience, and they want to go somewhere and see people and put together, looks for their home for themselves. And so there's definitely been a return to stores, but with this increased comfort and familiarity, they came along with the DTC environment associated with, with COVID, has kind of continued. So we're finding ourselves, I think, for the first time in an omni environment where, at least for businesses like ours, physical retail and digital are equally important channels.
Yeah, it's interesting because yes, online shopping has increased a lot, and after the pandemic, that stayed, as you said, John. People are more comfortable now with online shopping, although there has been an increase with in-store shopping compared to those days. But retailers looks like understand how important it is to have this omni-channel capability even more, right? Great, Sanjay.
Yeah, what I thought, Mehmet, would be helpful for the audience is just maybe to describe the format, the retail format we operate in, and then in that context, maybe share some of the changes that we've navigated post-pandemic. So Burlington Stores is an off-price retailer, and a lot of folks don't really, hear the word off-price all the time. You hear, specialty retail, you hear department stores, but what is off-price? So the sector of retail that we play in, it's a deep value sector. So the consumer is really looking for, above anything else, they're looking for value. And they look for value in what we call a treasure hunt. And the treasure hunt, in a very simple way, is essentially saying we don't really guarantee any sort of availability. So when you come into a store, in South Jersey, or you go across the river to Philadelphia, both Burlington stores, but they may be carrying slightly different assortment on the racks. And that is intentional. That is not accidental. That is intentional. And the idea is one of urgency around, when you come into the store, the prices are going to be great, but make sure you get what you like, because if you come back the next trip, it may be gone. Like, there's no guarantee we're going to have the same pair of Nike shoes or whatever shoes, again and again and again. So if you think of it from that standpoint, one of the things that really happened through the course of the pandemic is, as we navigated into this notion of a lot of stimulus money coming in from the federal government, and then there were port closures. If you remember back in the day, the Los Angeles port shut down, and there was, at one point there was 30 days worth of containers circling around the port and things like that. It really benefited our format in the sense additional disposable income to a customer that really values quote unquote value, and then inflation hitting all across the board. We saw this massive spike in demand. And then as we got into 2022, what happened is the stimulus kind of dried up. Oops, I think there's some background noise.
Retail was very much not a self-service paradigm. You walked into a store, you walked up to the counter. Behind the counter was the shop owner. The shop owner would either know you well enough to know what you were looking for, or you would tell them six of those, two of those, three of those.
You getting the same feedback, Mehmet? Because I don't know if it's just me.
I'm hearing.
Yeah, Mehmet, perhaps you could put yourself on mute. I think maybe perhaps the background noise might be coming from your end.
It's gone. Go ahead, Sanjay. No?
You start to get into the 50s and 60s where it starts to move to the
It's-
self-service
we
model.
have the-
No, it's still there.
We have a co-host. He's not visible for me. Please go ahead. I think it's okay. I just decided.
Do you want me to keep going?
Please, yes.
Okay. So what happened is, once in 2022, as the stimulus money kind of dried off, there was a huge amount of volatility. So what we had to navigate as a company, looking at the consumer landscape, this huge spike followed by this huge decline. And, as Chandan was mentioning, right now we start seeing a lot of that stability kind of play out. Also similar to what Chandan was talking about, we saw a very big shift in the categories of preference. So when, consumers were starting to work from home, it was all about activewear, it was casual wear, it was investment in, home decor and those kinds of categories. And as they came back into the office subsequently, again, the dress up and the polished look. And for us to be able to flex, from a supply chain standpoint, a buying, a merchandise, a planning standpoint, I think, again, all of that was pretty interesting. And the third thing that we noticed was just in terms of what their expectations are, consumer expectations in our stores. During the pandemic, of course, there was a hugely elevated expectation for safety, cleanliness, all the things associated with sort of the pandemic era. And then it gradually started shifting more towards safety in the context of shortage control. And today I think you see, especially in downtown environments, a lot of crime. And how do we then, start managing both in terms of operations and then meeting the expectations of customers to create that safe environment? But it means slightly different things during the COVID era versus today. So, in a nutshell, I think I would basically say volatility, huge amount of swings up and down, change in the business mix, and then change in expectations of the customer in terms of what she's expecting in that interaction in the store. So those would be sort of the big sort of three things that stood out.
Great summary. I mean, pandemic was a shock to the system, right? And it affected everyone, every organization. And it's interesting to even just when the three of you to see that, for example, the rental business, right? That was a complete full impact on the demand, but it seems like because of that mismatch in inventory supply demand, right? It affected positively, had a positive impact, and due to the prices as well for Burlington. So in terms of, again, going back to the panel's topic is focus, what kind of innovative models has your organization initiated in your inventory and supply chain management related processes in kind of response to these changes? And of course, these days, when we say innovation, it is technology driven, but please feel free to bring it up if you have a completely new mindset, business model, regardless of its technology. So Sanjay, would you like to go first, please?
Yeah, happy to. So, again, just to put it in context, for us, it's not about availability of merchandise. It's not the same item in all our, 1,000+ stores, but it is really about freshness and speed to market. So when we think about our supply chain, we think about innovations from, an efficiency standpoint, but also from a speed standpoint, because what we want to do is get the product like any other retailer, honestly, but we want to get it into the stores as quickly as possible, as fresh as it is, and then minimize the markdowns and get out of that particular product, because the same dollar that is in working capital gets flipped around to the next purchase order, to the next purchase order, and so on and so forth. So a lot of the innovations that are happening for us, when we think about the supply chain in particular, which I know is the focus today, has to do with how can we make investments in a thoughtful manner that either improve our efficiencies throughout the chain, improve the working capital in the stores, improve the speed with which we're able to get from the point of purchase of that particular, item at the vendor all the way to the store. And in that context, the group that I run, we support obviously enterprise-wide initiatives, cross-functional initiatives, but we also support our business units with their individual strategies. So with our supply chain partners, there's been a lot of work going into rethinking how we design our network for the next 5 to 10 years. Where do we want our distribution centers to be placed? How do we want to engage with the third-party logistics that carries between the distribution center and the last mile logistics in our stores? And how do we want to look at store operations as sort of a further extension of supply chain to ensure that the goods are in fact making its way to the rack as quickly as possible, minimum amount of backroom inventory, and then ultimately looking at investments from a technology standpoint to drive that efficiency, to drive lower markdown. So those are kind of some of the broad areas of innovation that we're currently exploring. The other thing that we have continued to push pretty hard is around this notion of end-to-end visibility, because often what we find is information kind of sits, in silos, and we can make better decisions if we can have, a better connection point across these, cutting across the different silos. Sometimes it's our own silos, and sometimes we're truly going into a third-party silo. So we have to be able to, cut across both. But those are the general areas, Mehmet, where we've been focusing on investments and innovation.
Janda, what were some of those in your business environment?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo a lot of what Sanjay said. For us, there's a lot more data and a lot more analytics that go into how we plan and how we allocate product. And if you've gone into Anthropologie stores, you're unlikely to see the same assortment in two stores. We really do assort specifically to a given store, to a given region, to a different customer base. So there's a lot more robustness that goes into that now. And then further upstream when it comes to product development, with respect to technology, we really are using quite a bit of AI, and it's impressive how quickly that technology capabilities that we have with it are advancing, right? So what that's really giving us, it's just a much faster time to market, right? The ability to design, develop, pattern, and fit, a garment or an accessory or even home goods, and it really reduces the number of physical samples. Of those physical samples. So that's been something that's great from a go-to-market timing perspective, and also from a sustainability perspective. I think when you have to fly samples around less, it's a good thing. So
yes, especially these days, right? Where the sustainability, and we had a dedicated session just on that. You might have noticed in the summit. And another thing is the product life cycle. That's also very interesting, how fast you bring to the market, given the extreme uncertainty, right, in your business. That's very critical Because you learn a lot more about the demand, right? That uncertainty is resolved as you get closer to the market, and that I'm sure has a positive impact on your inventory levels.
Yeah, for sure. And if you decouple commodity management from, from item level planning, right? You have the ability to very quickly, design and produce and test something and then chase into higher volumes of it once you've got your commodity management squared away.
Exactly. Oh, that's fascinating. Shefali, I know you're being in a rental business, right? It has a lot of different other implications. But I mean, the model itself is complete innovation, right? If you think about it.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, our supply chain is circular. Once we've onboarded a new garment, it's now part of our circular universe until we happen to decide to retire it. And our customer also happens to be part of our supply chain. So it comes to us, goes to the customer wears it, comes back to us, we clean it, quality check it, put it back into inventory. So it's beneficial for us to get our garments back into circulation as quickly as possible. This allows us to buy less so that and instead use the garments that we already own. So it's a cost savings for us to get the thing back into rotation as quickly as possible. So what we did during the pandemic, when we had a bit of a slowdown, we installed RFIDs in all of our garments. And we continue to do this part of now the onboarding process for new garments. Everything gets an RFID. So in the past, when we used to process all the returns that we got, it was by like piecemeal. We have to open the package, look at everything one by one. Now we're able to process thousands of garments daily in a matter of minutes by utilizing the RFID technology. So we've cut a huge amount of labor costs as well as inventory costs down, so that by cutting that time to get back into inventory. So I think I know RFID tech is not new, but I think it's always kind of a question of like, where is this technology best utilized? And I think we've done a pretty good job of figuring out a way to get the inventory back into circulation as quickly as possible. And we're continuing to find out ways while using the RFID tech for better accuracy, on all fronts, and visibility onto where our garments are at any given time during the cycle process.
That's fascinating. I mean, to hear another application of RFID. Shefali, is it common across the rental clothes industry, or you are one of like leading maybe?
I'm pretty sure we're the first to do that. I've heard that Rent the Runway may have started doing that. I'm not sure if Newly does, but I think we were the first to utilize RFID tech.
Because rental apparel is very heavy, like operational heavy, right? In terms of like each unit going out, back and forth, right? There's a lot of focus on that one single unit, right?
Correct. Yes, we're touching the same thing many times, so it makes sense on a rental model. I think Nike tried to use RFIDs, but I think they found it, for the most part, all their things are going out the door only once, and so in their particular use case, I think they were trying to assess item inventory in their warehouse to make sure everything was accurate. But the RFID tech is really great, but also very finicky. So I think they possibly discontinued that concept. But yeah, so it's great, but complicated.
Right, and it's probably not as beneficial for it. I mean, it's as beneficial in terms of when you think about the inventory discrepancy, right? As you said, the accuracy issues. I'm sure every company could benefit, but it's just that because of the nature of your business, but that single unit, right, coming back and forth, yeah, and you want to make the most out of it, right? I can see a lot more benefit in your case. Wow, great. So speaking of technology, let's continue with this discussion. So based on your experience, observations, right, so far, and the recent developments out there in the industry, which stage of supply chains, right, which stage of supply chain management would benefit the most from use of analytics, digital transformation, and where do you think should your organization invest more? So this is more like there are things you did, but then as you observe this, right, you realize, and you're also, have an eye on what's going on in the industry, right? Even now, maybe from one another, right? You figured, where do you think should you be focusing more or investing more? I do realize resources are limited, right? You have to allocate. And what kind of challenges would you expect when you do that, when you invest in that particular part of the supply chain? So I will leave that up to you, whoever wants to go first.
I can go since I'm already off mute.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so we're always trying to shorten the amount of time it spends in every kind of, the garment spend in every section. And right now, quality control is something that we're working on. We're trying to shorten the amount of time something spends in quality control before it gets put back into inventory. Quality control, yes.
Can you elaborate on quality control in your business?
Oh, sure. Yes. So we the garments are rented. It goes on a human body. It gets cleaned. We want to make sure that the garment is cleaned and ready to go for the next customer. So we're smell checking. We're making sure there are no stains on the garment. We're making sure that all the hardware is functioning properly. So it's a very labor intensive practice to make sure that the garment is good to go back into inventory. What we are looking at, and I think possibly this could apply to other companies in a different way, but we're lucky enough to be able to get kind of instant reviews on all of our garments. Everybody is reviewing the item before they send it back to us. So we have some insights, whether it's through fit or quality or something was wrong with it. We have those insights from our customers directly. And so we technically know this information before this stuff even gets back to us. And so what we are trying to do is smartly connect our quality control process with our customer reviews to both influence how we quality control. Perhaps we can do things faster with the information that is already provided. And perhaps we can buy better with the information that is already provided from our customers, this kind of live stream of instant feedback. So we're lucky enough to be able to make some like instant or rather quick changes on our buying if we have a sense of what people are liking, or possibly do some return to vendors if we're finding that people are not liking some of the garments for whatever consistent reason. So I think where we should invest and where we are starting to invest further is in our product reviews. And how do we leverage that kind of constant feedback that we have on a daily basis?
That's very good. I mean, I obviously know the consumer reviews, its impact and all that going on, but the connection, that instantaneous connection, you probably encourage your customers to give those reviews, and that connection back to operations is very, innovative, very interesting. Chandan?
Yeah, I mean, I would add to what Shefali was saying, right? I mean, anytime we can take data and push it upstream, that's good, right? And so that's really what we invest in, whether it's from a planning and buying perspective or a product development perspective, right? Because at Anthro, we're in the buying business. We're also in the designing and developing and producing business, right? So we, that type of feedback for us can also make its way upstream to how we design a product or the fabrics that that we're using or that we're acquiring. But I mean, ultimately, the more that we can invest upstream, right? I mean, the bigger the downstream impact, right? And I mean, I guess that's a very obvious thing to say, but so, from my perspective, product development, planning, and allocation are the places where I'm really looking to invest additional tech and data capabilities, right? Because that's where I see the biggest bang for our buck.
You're giving me a lot of research. I've been taking notes, research ideas, because the connections, right, between the product design, John, you said first, right, and then the reviews, as you follow that, and then all the connections there. Earlier, it used to be more like store managers, right? You were relying on store managers, what sold, what didn't sell, like in classic traditional sales business, right? Even that would take time, right? Several weeks by the time it was communicated to designers. Now this is pretty like instantaneous, and from a number of customers, I can see how that can be so beneficial, right, in completing that cycle. Great, Sanjay, you wanna?
Yeah, I mean, some of it I think is going to overlap with what Chandan and Shafali were talking about in terms of, I think you heard me say before, the visibility across different silos. So I would probably put that in the bucket of, getting better data, investing in technologies that allow us to see across, boundaries and silos, and just have better, visibility into how the supply chain is functioning. The second bucket, I think, in my mind, would be, again, similar to what Chandan was talking about on the planning allocations. For us, it would be using the data and finding more optimal outcomes because we are smarter, because we have more data. And that sits as much in a corporate function where we're doing the forecasting functions, but also, frankly, when you think supply chain, I'm thinking of the DCs as well. So how are we actually designing the flow of goods within the DC so that it's more optimized? We have less looping around to get to the right stations, those kinds of things. And then the last piece, that maybe it'll be an incremental add to what was discussed, is not just from a software and analytics, but also from a hardware investment. When we think about, the physical infrastructure, a lot of the times, distribution centers are designed with a 15, 20, year lifespan. And we can leave it be as it is, or I think it behooves us to go in from time to time and say, new technology, kind of rip and replace XYZ components, and those are expensive, and that takes your capacity down. But how can you be thoughtful about making those investment cases so that the retrofits, will actually pay for themselves? So I would kind of think of the investments on our side in those three kind of big, broad buckets: hardware, optimization, analytics, and then visibility and data. And we're, I mean, could we do more? Yes, like any other company, we can do a lot more, but we're already doing a lot.
Mhm. Can I ask you, Sanjay, to elaborate more on that supply chain visibility? The reason I'm asking is supply chain visibility, transparency has always been important in not only just retail sector, but in other industries, right? And when you think of, I don't know how retail supply chains would compare to maybe some of the other industries, but as you know, there are different tiers, different stages, right? There are second tier, third tier suppliers, and it has been my understanding, it has been a huge challenge, right, for companies to have that kind of visibility, suppliers, and they supply chain mapping, right, understanding where things flow and all that has been. How is it, why did it become even more important, and how is it different in the retail, apparel retail, having that visibility? Is it more important, and in particular for Burlington, how did you manage it? How are you now? What are your
Yeah,
suggestions?
no, I think that's a good question. I mean, if I start just overall from a retail landscape, and then we can talk about specific,
Sure.
to Burlington, I think in the apparel and footwear sector, probably also in the food sector, there's a lot of compliance-driven visibility needs. The factories where the goods are being made, or even frankly where the fabric is being procured from. Is it ethical, and are we using sources that are ethical? So from an overall industry, the apparel sector, has certain nuances. I mean, every sector has its own, but the apparel sector certainly has its own nuances to what level of second and third order visibility is important. For us, I think at Burlington, I would say, we, like anyone else, we have a lot of goods coming from overseas, and sometimes when we're managing to the speed to market, having visibility into that next order, right beyond the ports, all the way up, from the factories where they're being shipped out of, I think it's important for us to have a good sense of seasonal timing. We do not have, unlike many other retails channels, we don't have a return to vendor policy. If at the end of the season something doesn't sell, for the most part, the markdown risk, is on us, right? And so we're very, very careful about how we manage the visibility side. On the flip end, we also have a huge opportunity because we leverage something called pack away. So goods that may not sell, in a full price format because it's towards the end of the season, we end up picking up a lot of those products and we pack it away in our DCs and then release it back, the next year. So from that standpoint, visibility is kind of on both sides of the coin. It can either help us immensely for our own choices. It can also help us immensely because it creates opportunities for us to get products that would be significantly better IMU, in that sense. And then further down, I think it starts becoming kind of more prototypical, as we want to see the products flow through the DCs and out into the stores. I think over there's probably more commonality in terms of just, shortage control needs, audit needs, seeing the sell through and making choices. Chandan talked about, the localization of different stores and how to assort based on different allocations parameters. So I think those things become, in my mind, I think start looking more similar. But the further upstream you go, it is a pretty interesting dynamic in the overall apparel retail segment because of the various compliance related needs.
Great. Thank you for clarifying that. It's fascinating all these challenges that you are facing in managing your supply chains, but doing a lot of great things. With that, let's move on to another topic, which is not directly maybe one of the first issues that comes to mind when we talk about inventory and supply chains. But these days, with the increase in online shopping, as we were saying at the beginning and during the pandemic, right, there has been a lot of returns as well, right? Consumer returns has become more and more important. It used to be more like a decade ago, maybe a secondary issue, like retailers would say, oh, I'm just going to deal with it as it happens. But by now, it's very clear, looking at the numbers, I'm sure you all know, it's not a secondary issue anymore. Looking at especially in apparel, the percentages, it could go as high as 40% in online apparel sales. So it is an issue, right? So with that, of course, as customers, right, we love lenient returns, and we are willing to pay even more when we see a product that comes with a flexible return policy. But at the same time, it also leads to more returns, right? Flexible return policies leads to more returns. And that means more inventory at your end to liquidate, to sell, potentially at lower prices because people delay their returns towards the end of the season, right? It loses its value. So therefore, it has an impact, actual direct impact, I would say, on inventory management and supply chains and all that. So, and I realize this is a topic on its own, and but I want to get your thoughts on, because going back to my first question on changes in consumer trend, you said online, it has been increased online shopping. So I would like to hear your thoughts on that. And is there anything, first of all, you did with your return policies to mitigate the negative consequences of that? If not, what are any new business models you implemented, and any plans to better respond to these issues you're facing? Jandan, would you like to go first, please?
Sure. So, I think the first thing that's important from our point of view is that returns are a service opportunity for us, right? So our customer wants to be able to buy stuff and return stuff, and so we want to give them what they want, And so we view that as an important service, and we want to provide that service with, you know, kind of the same level of engagement as we would a sale. That it really is an engagement opportunity. And what we found is as we've studied, you know, our returns metrics and return behavior, is that you know, more returns. You know, obviously, you know, we have to, you know, we have to manage it, and we have to, you know, we have to. We've had some creative solutions that we've had to put together around inventory, but returns lead to more sales, right? We actually have a metric that we've started tracking in stores, which is return conversion. So more of our online purchases that are returned, a higher percentage of those returns actually come back into a store versus get returned online, right? So that's an engagement opportunity and a conversion opportunity for our store teams, and they're very enthusiastic about being able to, you know, talk to customers. Why are you returning it? What didn't you like about it? That information gets fed back to us very quickly, and it gives us another opportunity to kind of help somebody find something that they do want. So we had to kind of shift our mindset from, oh my gosh, returns are kind of painful, to, well, hold on a second, like there's a lot of upside around returns, and if our customer likes it, then we like it. You know, granted, there also have to be some controls, right? Because you can inadvertently end up, you know, being in an accidental clothing rental business, right? So we're not looking to compete directly when it comes to that, but you know, we at Anthro Group, right, we also have weddings, for example, right? I mean, buying a wedding dress is an extremely considered purchase. It's something that's done pretty infrequently, and it's something that requires, you know, try on and very specific fit. You know, something like a wedding dress has a very high return rate and has very different procedures that probably much more resemble, Shefali, what your DCs look like, right? Our wedding dress room is probably is probably very similar to your distribution center than just the rest of our fulfillment centers. But you look at something like wedding gowns, you look at something like denim swimsuits versus alpha size dresses or knits. These things all have very different return rates and very different return trends, and that tends to tie to the fabric and the fit and the occasion that the item is for. Housewares have very different returns and very different considerations around how you kind of pack up and return something. Or, you know, for example, we sell furniture and home decor and all kinds of home goods online, and we sell some of them in stores, but you can return those items to store, right? So what happens when somebody returns a big piece of wall decor to a store that doesn't sell wall decor? So there's definitely a lot of reverse logistics considerations, and so we've had to put a lot of processes in place there. But from our perspective, you know, the upside really outweighs that effort because our customer wants this and use it as a service, and we get to engage with them. So we're into it. We like returns.
I really like the point you raised here about mostly returns are sees as a problematic, but you want to see them more like this is a point, it's an interaction. It gives us an opportunity, right, to interact with the customer, and we can utilize the feedback we get. That's your point. That's
right.
That's a great way to think about returns. Another benefit of returns. Good, great, thank you. And one more point about our panel to the audience. Please feel free to drop any questions you might have in our Q&A section, and I'll be happy to bring it up and ask our panelists. Shefali, would you like to go next about returns?
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, of course, we're a rental model, so 99% of our packages come back to us, and that's what we like to see. So we actually, you know, when we notice that somebody has not returned their case or a particular item, that's actually an interesting flag for us. And if somebody has kept something for a long time, that's an indication that somebody really likes that item, and perhaps they're wearing it a lot. And if they've kept it for so long that by the time we think that they're going to return it, it's going to be out of season. We actually offer discounts for them to buy that particular item.
Mass that.
So we don't want to get something back that something, you know, a garment has been worn for, you know, too much, that by the time it comes back to us, that it's not suitable to rent again. Nor do we want something that's out of season to store that for another 9 months until it's ready to be rented again. So we've got like an opposite thing where we if somebody's had something for too long, we don't want it anymore. It seems like it should be in its forever home. So that's our
And
thing.
don't you limit the time that the customers can keep the product, or they can keep as long as they want, or you have a limit on the
No,
quantity?
yeah, they can keep it for as long as they want. You know, provided that their membership is active, you can keep it an item or multiple items depending on your plan size for as long as you like.
Mhm. Wonderful. Sanjay, how was it at Burlington?
Yeah, I mean, similar to the way Chandan was describing it, I think we see returns as another opportunity for us to engage with our customers. And so in that sense, we don't necessarily see it as a, as a negative. Now, obviously, if there is some very egregious sort of abuse of the system, that's a whole other thing. But for the most part, we actually are fine with that additional touch point, with that additional trip. For us, I think the thing to keep in mind is we turn our products very quickly. So we operate on a very fast turn business, and so if the customers kept the product for some decent amount of time, couple of weeks or whatever, and they come back wanting to return it, it's quite possible they may not get the price that they paid for it, because the product may already be in its markdown life cycle, and they may that they may not get the full value back. So from that standpoint, I think I guess it could create some customer friction. So we're aware of that. But over time, I think the customer that shops the off-price channel is also fairly savvy and understands the trade-offs. Speaking of returns, something interesting happened during the pandemic. We actually had to shut down all our fitting rooms for personal hygiene and safety reasons. And at the time, we were kind of concerned how that would impact the inability to try on, pants or whatever, right, before the purchase. And what we saw was there was a slight blip. It wasn't actually for our store. We actually did not see a huge, like a massive change in the return rate. So the reason I bring it up is just to share that most of the time it's, the system is not being abused. I think people, there's like a steady state return rate that did not really get gamed, so to say. And from our perspective, we really see it as another trip, another opportunity, another interaction point.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all your insights. I appreciate all the wisdom you shared with the audience. Any last minute words, advice, or for retailers that is about to undertake maybe some technology-driven digital transformation related projects, what to pay attention to, what to, based on your experience, maybe any last minute thoughts there? Especially these days with the AI and all that, right? All right, great. So thank you again for joining our panel. It was great to have the three leaders and experts in their field, and we will continue with our second keynote session at 3 p.m. Thank you so much.